The Jacksonville Jaguars just sent a message that almost nobody saw coming, and it hit louder than the score itself. A simple road game turned into something far bigger when they walked into Tennessee and walked out with a 25-3 reminder that they are not slipping, they are not stumbling, and they are not letting anyone drag them into a trap. This looked like a team that knew exactly who they are and exactly what they want. And the shocking part is how casual they made it look. No panic, no chaos, no desperation, just total control from the opening moments, the kind of control that hints at something the rest of the league has not fully realized yet. What nobody is talking about is how dangerous that kind of calm can be. Tennessee came in playing the spoiler role, trying to wreck playoff hopes, trying to turn this into a messy fight, but Jacksonville refused to play that script for even a second. They went up early, held the momentum, and never lost their grip on the game. Even with penalties slowing them down, the Jaguars still pushed the lead with ease, turning every small break into a bigger one. When a team can play far from perfect and still win this cleanly, it raises the real question that nobody wants to say out loud. How good can this group get when everything is actually clicking? And that is where things start to get interesting, because this win was not about one lucky bounce or one crazy highlight. It was about a team building a rhythm that is getting harder to ignore, and a quarterback who looked more steady than he has in weeks. The next part of the story begins with Trevor Lawrence, and the strange way this felt like the calmest and sharpest game he has played in a long time. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Jaguars and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 500 likes on this video. The Jacksonville Jaguars just watched Trevor Lawrence deliver the kind of game that every contender quietly dreams about. A day where your quarterback never gives the other team a real opening. No wild swings, no panic throws, no careless mistakes, just steady control from the first drive to the final snap. On paper, it looks simple, but the truth is this level of calm is rare. He ran the offense like a quarterback who knew the game was in his hands and never once looked like he was feeling any real stress from the Titans' defense. Instead of forcing deep shots or trying to chase highlights, Trevor Lawrence picked his moments with real patience. He finished with 229 yards and 2 touchdowns on 16 of 27 passing, and the most important number was 0 turnovers. When the pocket was clean, he stepped up and fired on time. When it started to close, he used his legs to escape, move the chains, and avoid negative plays. He stood in against pressure, trusted his reads, and made the smart throw again and again. It felt less like a quarterback trying to prove something and more like one who already understands that this is how you quietly win important games in December. The scary part for the rest of the league is that this version of Trevor Lawrence is starting to sync up with a group of weapons that is getting more dangerous every week. His ball placement over the middle, his timing on and breaking routes, and his comfort throwing into tight windows all showed up in this win, and it was not by accident. You can see the rhythm building with his receivers, and especially with one key target who kept finding space in the soft spots of the Titans' coverage. That growing connection is where this story really starts to shift, and it is the part that might worry defensive coordinators the most. The Jacksonville Jaguars just watched Jakobi Meyers turn into that receiver every defense hates to see across from them, the one who always seems open when the play really matters. He did not need crazy trick plays or circus catches to change this game. He simply kept showing up in the right space at the right time, snapping off clean routes and giving Trevor Lawrence a simple answer every time Tennessee tried to tighten up. 6 catches, 0 misses, and constant damage in the heart of the field turn this from a normal road win into a quiet warning about what this pairing is becoming. The shocking part is how simple the big moments looked. On that long strike over the middle, Parker Washington sprinted deep and pulled the safety out of the picture, and Jakobi Meyers slid right into the empty grass underneath with perfect timing. Trevor Lawrence trusted the concept so much that the ball was already on the way as Jakobi Meyers came out of his break, and once he caught it, the extra yards came from effort plays around him, including strong work from Brian Thomas Jr. sealing off a lane. That is not random luck. That is a quarterback, a receiver, and a coordinator all seeing the same picture and punishing a defense that guessed wrong. What nobody is talking about is how this connection changes the entire future of this offense. Jakobi Meyers is playing like a reliable chain mover right now, but when you picture him lined up with a healthy Travis Hunter, a fully ramped up Brian Thomas Jr., and a vertical threat like Parker Washington, you can see why fans are already saying to keep him in the building long term. Defenses will not be able to shade everyone at once, and that is where the next layer of this attack comes in, because the story does not stop with one wide receiver. The tight end room and the rest of the skill group are starting to wake up too, and that is where this offense becomes even more dangerous. The Jacksonville Jaguars are quietly building an offense where the ball never has to beg for a hero, because there is always another weapon ready to step in. Brenton Strange reminded everyone of that in this game. He did not just catch a touchdown. He found space up the seam, settled in soft zones, and gave Trevor Lawrence a strong target in the middle of the field when the coverage squeezed outside. Those 3 catches for 45 yards and a score were not empty numbers. They showed a tight end who can win on deeper routes, not just little safety valves, and that kind of threat makes every coverage call a little more stressful for a defensive coordinator. Then you look at the receivers behind Jakobi Meyers, and the picture gets even more interesting. Brian Thomas Jr. came back and looked smooth right away, attacking open grass and showing that easy stride that can flip the field in a blink. Parker Washington once again pushed defensive backs down the field, forcing safeties to turn and run, even before his hip issue cut his day short. When you add the idea of Travis Hunter returning to this mix, you start to see a group where every role matters. One player clears out the top, another punishes the space underneath, and Brenton Strange slices between levels, so there is always someone presenting a clean answer for the quarterback. The scary part is that all of this firepower is sitting behind a line that, when it holds up, lets these routes fully develop and turn simple concepts into explosive gains. The skill talent is not the problem for Jacksonville. The question now is whether the big men up front in the ground game can rise to the same level, keep Trevor Lawrence upright, and add a physical edge that matches the creativity of these weapons. That is where the next layer of this story really sits, in the trenches where games in December and January are truly decided. The Jacksonville Jaguars leaned on their big men up front in a way that did not show up fully in the box score, but it showed up every time Trevor Lawrence hit the top of his drop and stood tall. From the start, the pocket looked calm and steady, which is not easy on the road. Deep corners and long posts need real trust between quarterback and protection, and the line gave him that space over and over. Even after Walker Little left with a concussion and the group had to shuffle, they held their ground well enough for Lawrence to scan, reset, and fire without panic. That kind of steady wall is the quiet engine behind a clean passing day. Where things lagged was on the ground, and that is where Jacksonville will be the most honest with themselves in the film room. Tennessee might have a rough record, but a front with Jeffrey Simmons is never soft, and they played the run with real pride. The Jaguars kept handing it off, yet the lanes rarely opened the way this offense is used to seeing. Travis Etienne found very little room before contact, and the rookie Baishul Tootin had to fight for almost every yard on his carries, even though he did punch in a short score. By the end of the night, you had a run game that needed a lot of tries just to squeeze out modest production, and that is not the standard this team expects from a group that has already proven it can be a top rushing attack. That is why this game feels less like a finished product and more like a checklist for what has to sharpen before the real tests hit. The Jaguars know they need cleaner double teams, better finishes on the edge, and a run game that can carry drives when the weather, the clock, or the matchup demands it. The schedule is bringing more physical fronts, including a tough Colts defense that will not give anything free at the line of scrimmage. On those days, they will need the line and backs to match the standard set by the passing game, and when that does not happen, everything shifts to the other side of the ball. In this win, the defense answered that shift in a big way, with Josh Hines, Allen and company turning rookie Cam Ward into exactly the kind of limited passer a locked-in contender wants to see. The Jacksonville Jaguars defense walked into this game with a simple goal, and then turned it into a clinic in control. It started with Josh Hines Allen, who spent the night living in the backfield. He stacked up pressure snaps, chased plays from behind, and finished with 2 sacks that felt even bigger than the stat line. Every time Cam Ward hit the top of his drop, you could feel the pocket start to crumble from the edges. That kind of constant heat does not just create sacks. It speeds up the clock in a quarterback's head and forces mistakes that do not always show on a box score. What nobody is really talking about is how well the entire front worked together around Josh Hines Allen. You had interior push from players like Austin Johnson, who added a sack of his own, and steady disruption from guys like Gardeck, who kept collapsing lanes and closing escape routes. The Jaguars mixed their looks, walked bodies up to the line, hinted at heavy pressure, then often rushed for and still won. The result was Cam Ward putting up 24 completions on 38 attempts for only 141 yards, which is 3.7 yards per attempt. That is a defense squeezing every inch of space out of the field, rallying to tackles, and forcing short throws that never turn into real damage. The scary part is how complete that side of the ball looked, even with the offense still cleaning things up. They held Tennessee to 3 points, forced multiple fumbles, and turned a young rookie quarterback into exactly the kind of one-dimensional passer they wanted to see. But there is one area where this group still has to grow if they want this style of dominance to carry into the biggest games. The aggression and physical edge are already there. Now the question is whether they can keep that same intensity while cutting down the one thing that kept giving the Titans free yards all night long, the one habit that could flip a playoff game in the wrong moment. The Jacksonville Jaguars put on a strong show in Tennessee, but the one thing that kept giving the Titans life was the yellow on the field, not the players in white. You cannot look at a box score that shows 13 penalties for 98 yards and pretend that is not a real warning sign. Flags came at bad times, on scoring drives, on field position swings, and even on plays that were already going nowhere. Instead of forcing Tennessee to earn every inch, Jacksonville sometimes handed them extra chances with holds, illegal contact, and small lapses that had nothing to do with talent. That is the only reason this win did not turn into a complete avalanche. The problem is not effort, it is control. This is a physical team, and that mindset is a strength, but against better opponents, that same edge can turn into free first downs if it is not handled the right way. Imagine this same style of game against the Colts, the Texans, or a contender like the Chiefs in a tight playoff setting. One defensive hold on 3rd and long, one block in the back on a big return, one offensive penalty that turns 3rd and short into 3rd and long, and suddenly the whole rhythm of a game can tilt. Jacksonville has the talent to dictate matchups, yet the next evolution for this group is learning how to stay aggressive without grabbing, tugging, or arriving just a split second late in ways the officials cannot ignore. That is why this performance feels both exciting and a little unfinished. They prove they can go on the road, dominate a division rival, and never let the result feel in doubt, even with all those mistakes. Now the question becomes simple but huge. What happens when this team cleans up that part of their game and stops giving away free movement down the field? Because once you take those extra yards off the table and pair this discipline with an 8-4 record, a surging offense, and a defense that just smothered Tennessee, you are not only talking about winning one game, you are talking about a group that can control the entire AFC South race. And that bigger picture is where this story now moves. The Jacksonville Jaguars are sitting at 8-4 after a 25-3 road beatdown that looked less like survival and more like a team testing how much control they can have over a season. This is not the old version of Jacksonville that needed perfect conditions just to hang around. This is a group that can play a messy game with penalties, lose key players during the day, and still walk out with a calm 3-score win inside the division. While everyone argues about super teams in other conferences, this team is stacking quiet evidence that they might already be shaping how the AFC South race plays out without making a lot of noise about it. What nobody is really ready to admit is how boxed in the rest of the division suddenly looks. The Texans just helped Jacksonville by beating the Colts, which pulled Indianapolis back at the exact time the Jaguars are getting healthier and sharper. Now you have a first-place showdown on the horizon where one more win does more than move the standings. It sends a message that this division now runs through a team with Trevor Lawrence in command, Jacoby Myers becoming a problem, Brenton Strange, Brian Thomas Jr., and Parker Washington growing every week, and Josh Hines-Allen leading a defense that just held Tennessee to a single field goal. That combination is not a fluke. It is a full roster starting the lineup in the right order. The real twist is what happens if Jacksonville turns this from a division story into a conference story. If they clean up the penalties, keep their stars on the field, and bring this same calm control into matchups against teams like the Chiefs and other AFC contenders, people will have to stop treating them like a background team and start treating them like a problem that has to be solved. Right now they are winning while still leaving obvious room to grow. Once that space closes and the rough edges smooth out, the question flips completely. It is no longer whether the Jaguars can keep up with the rest of the AFC, it is whether the rest of the AFC is ready for a Jacksonville team that looks like it is just getting started, and now we can break down exactly how their path through the Colts, the Texans, and the stretch run could shake up the entire playoff picture.